What is going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving you a full spoiler-free review of M3GAN. So I just got done seeing it in the theaters and I have quite a few things to say about it. A lot of positives and a lot of negatives. So let's get right into it. Starting off with the positives, I do think the main character that's mainly focused on in this film, her name's Gemma. She's essentially just this really hardworking woman who doesn't really have time for kids or a relationship, or she doesn't really want those things either. And she's put in a situation where she has to take care of Katie because Katie's parents pass away in a car accident. So now she's stuck in a situation that she did not want to be in, obviously, and she doesn't really know how to fix it. She doesn't really know what to do because she doesn't really have the time to take care of Katie. She doesn't really have the time to connect to Katie, and Katie obviously needs someone in her life because of what happened. And Gemma also happens to work for the company that's making the M3GAN doll, so she just essentially gives M3GAN over to Katie, and they form this bond, and all while she's trying to have Katie bond with M3GAN, she's also trying to show her boss about this thing so she can eventually get this thing like out there so they can actually make this a product that's mass produced and put out in stores. And so that's like the two main things going on in this film. You have them trying to show off this product to other people, as well as M3GAN bonding with Katie. And there's a lot of good aspects to it. Like I said, I enjoy her as a character. I think the way they utilize her makes perfect sense in the story. And I like the themes of like technology taking over children's lives. That's kind of what's the main focus of this. They mentioned that quite a few times. It's obviously a parallel to phones in real life and how that's kind of taking over children's lives even just today. I mean, kids don't even play with toys anymore. A lot of kids don't even want to have friends anymore because they can just play on their phone all day, and it's giving them the same exact enjoyment as they probably would have otherwise. But obviously, for the sake of social connection, it's not the same, and it's kind of the same thing they're trying to show here with M3GAN, because although M3GAN does have way more social capabilities compared to something like a phone, she's still not human. She's never going to be human, so it does kind of have an effect on Katie, and she becomes way too addicted to this toy. And a couple of those ideas they explore in the film, and I do think it is pretty well handled. Another big positive is just how it's made, like the technical aspects of this film. Not in one point in this film did I ever feel like the doll did not look good. Now, obviously, most of it was someone in a mask or in a suit of some sort doing a bunch of crazy stunts. Like, it obviously wasn't a full animatronic that they were able to make do all this stuff. But some of the scenes are animatronics, you can tell, and some of it probably a little bit of CGI here and there, and it all looks really good. There's not a single point where I ever felt like it wasn't looking great. So from that perspective, it's a damn good looking movie. And the last positive I really want to point out is the comedy. There was actually quite a bit of comedy to this movie, and it was genuinely really good comedy. It wasn't like, you know, having me on the floor dying of laughter every 5 seconds, but there was a couple of moments that really had my whole theater laughing out loud. For even one scene, they were laughing out loud for probably like 20 seconds straight. So it definitely is going to get quite a few laughs out of you, whether it's because of the absurdity of it or of a joke they tried to make or whatever it may be. There's a lot of moments where you're going to be laughing. And obviously it's always revolving around M3GAN, because yeah, it's a funny doll. She does some funny things, and some of it you probably have already seen in the trailers, like the dancing and everything like that. But there's a couple other moments that aren't in the trailers that I do think are definitely worth the theater experience, just having everyone laugh along with it. It's a good time. So even with all the negatives I'm about to mention, I will say this movie is definitely worth seeing. It's a good time regardless of the problems that it does have. So with that being said, let's get into the negatives. My biggest negative, without a doubt, and I feel like I say this pretty often nowadays, it should have been R-rated, and I'm definitely one of those people who feels like there's a ton of things that just should be R-rated. I don't think it has to be. Like, I don't think anything has to be R-rated. You can pull it off as a PG-13 property. It's just a lot harder to pull it off, and I don't think this movie really pulled it off all that well. An example of a movie that should have been R-rated that was able to pull off a PG-13 rating would be something like The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight, I feel like, definitely could have been R-rated, and I do think it could have made the movie even better possibly, but they pulled it off. They did it really well. They were able to make it work just fine with that rating. It doesn't need to be R, and I don't think anything needs to be R, but a slasher film is so hard to pull off with a PG-13 rating. It is so hard, because one of the main things people go to see a slasher film for, myself included, are the kills. Just, it's simple as that. Like, there's no way that is not one of your top 3 reasons for going to see a Halloween film, a Friday the 13th film, Nightmare on Elm Street, Chucky, and M3GAN is included in that. This is a slasher. It is definitely under the same realm as something like Child's Play, and it's really hard to pull that off with a PG-13 rating because the kills all suck. There's not a single one of them that I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. No, because they have to show them off screen, or it's like shown in a very tame way where there's like no blood, and it honestly just doesn't have that same impact as it would otherwise. And I think it does matter because one of the main appeals, like I said, of slasher films are seeing those gruesome kills, and it makes you have these reactions such as like, oh, like, you know, you have those reactions like, oh my god, that's crazy, like those sort of reactions that you have when you see like gruesome kills. You don't get that in this because all the kills are just kind of either, you know, she's about to kill someone and it's kind of anticipating that moment and it's kind of building up to it, and then they just cut to the next day and you just assume that, oh, she must have killed the person, or she'll kill someone, but it'll be in such a way where it just looks so unrealistic and kind of ridiculous because they can't show any blood. In one part of the movie, she ripped off a body part from someone. I won't spoil what body part it was, but she rips off someone's body part and there's like no blood. There's maybe just a tiny bit of blood that they show a couple seconds later, but it's not in the initial part of ripping off this body part, and it just looks stupid because of that, because it's like, well, no, there would be blood. Another part where she stabs someone through the chest, again, there's pretty much no blood. It's just not satisfying to see that, you know what I mean? You compare this to something like Malignant, where you have this person going around killing people, and it looks insane because it's like, oh, you see the blood, you see the actual killing, and you're able to have that effect, and you get to see the creativity of what they're able to do with the kills, and this movie just does not have that whatsoever. Even with the kills, there's not that many of them, so even if it was like, you know, they were gory or anything, there's only like a couple of them. It's not anything that crazy. Another thing I would say that's a negative is there's quite a few logical fallacies with the story, and it's kind of a campy film, so it's not like it matters that much. Like, I'm not gonna try to nitpick every little plot hole because that's kind of a waste of time with a movie like this, but there are a few things I would like to point out. The whole idea of M3GAN, I feel like, was kind of just stupid to begin with. Like, first of all, these people seem to be pretty smart, they do, but like, how could they have possibly have allowed this thing to get to a point where it's able to do what it's doing? I just don't understand that. It's never really fully explained. Like, I don't get it. There was, in the Child's Play 2019 remake, which we're going to talk about in a little bit actually, but they actually were able to make a pretty logical reason as to why the doll is doing what it's doing. But in this one, it's just like, I don't even understand why it's able to do all this shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she has this connection to the Katie character, but if they didn't program it to do the certain things that it's doing, why is it doing it? You know what I mean? They don't really go in depth with that, and it's just not really like it's that important to it, because like I said, it's not really trying to care about that stuff. It is a campy film, but I think it takes away from the film just a teensy bit. The third act also is really just disappointing. I actually really enjoyed the first 2 acts. Like, honestly, at a certain point in this film, I was like, this is actually a really damn good movie, and I still do think it's a good film, but I do think the third act just was disappointing because I was expecting them to go in a really just crazy direction with it, and it kind of just goes for the safer, tame route that I did not want it to go down. I wanted there to be more to this, but no. And with that being said, I want to compare this to Child's Play 2019 because I know it's going to get compared a bunch because it's pretty much the same movie. Like, it's so similar. I don't think that's a negative that it's so similar. I hate when people call a movie shitty just because it's really similar to another movie. I don't think that's fair to say because it's probably taking inspiration, sure, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. Inspiration is always allowed in art. You're allowed to take inspiration from other people as long as you're not obviously, you know, completely copying it word for word, but they're not doing that. It is its own film. It's just this story is so similar to Child's Play 2019. And the reason why I'm talking about this in the negatives is because that movie just does everything that this film does, but a little bit better, I would say. Except for maybe the comedy, I do think this was a little bit funnier, but that film just takes every single aspect this film does and just does it better. So if you want to watch, you know, this sort of robotic doll that this kid gets to kind of form a bond because they're not really forming bonds with other people, and then eventually that thing starts to get really overprotective over the kid and starts killing people because of that. It's literally the exact same plot. Like, I just do think that film did it better, even with the third act especially. Like, Child's Play 2019 went in a crazy direction with it, But this one, like I said, was just felt kind of tame. And that film is also R-rated, so you have a lot of awesome kills. So it's hard for me not to compare them. Like, I don't think it's a negative because this is so similar. I think it's a negative because it just does not live up to that whatsoever. So when I compare them, because of how similar they are, it's like, what does this one have that that one doesn't, other than, like I said, some of the comedy? But at the end of the day, I do think this is a good movie. I think it's worth watching. I just don't think it's anything that's that mind-blowing. I feel like a lot of people are going to expect this film to be a complete masterpiece because it has like a really high critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not sure if it still does, but it likely does. But something people need to keep in mind about Rotten Tomatoes, there's so many reasons why you shouldn't let Rotten Tomatoes get to your mind about how you're probably going to feel about the movie, for a couple of reasons. First of all, when you look at the critic scores, there are not that many critic reviews. Everyone was freaking out over this film having a 94% or something like that, and it only had like 30 to 50 reviews from critics, maybe. Like, think about that for a second. That's 30 to 50 people on this entire earth out of the billions of people that exist. You're telling me that you're gonna let 30 to 40 people decide your opinion on this film? Like, that's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Even the user reviews, usually they're like, what, a couple thousand maybe for most films. Sometimes when it's like really popular film, it gets to the 100,000s, but still, it's not enough people for it to really decide how you should feel about the film. And also, Rotten Tomatoes, their scores are not averages. This is the most important thing that nobody understands. They see a 94% and they go, wow, people must have loved this movie. But no, a film could have a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 100%. But every single one of those reviews could be a 3 out of 5 review, which is also a 6 out of 10 if you're going in at a 10 rating. So that means the average of that would be a 60%, not a 100%. But Rotten Tomatoes does not care because the rating is done by the percentage of positive reviews, and the positive reviews are considered anything above a 3 out of 5, like I said. So that's all it means. So 94% does not mean they all gave it really high reviews. It just means they all thought it was above, or most of them at least, thought it was above a 3 out of 5. That's all they thought, right? And overall, this is a pretty harmless film. So a lot of times when films are like this, where they're just very like family friendly, like there's definitely not anything about this film that I feel like is gonna turn off people. Like, for example, gore. So one of the big reasons slasher films never get high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, because people don't like gore, and if people don't like gore, they're gonna give it a low rating. So critics automatically are just like, oh, I don't like this, too much gore, I don't like it. This film doesn't have that. So there's a lot of reasons why the Rotten Tomatoes score is so high for M3GAN. I just think it's important to note that it does not automatically mean you're gonna love the film just because of that. I do think the overall rating is gonna be a bit more in the middle, like maybe like a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 type thing for the average person, which, looking at IMDb, I just checked recently, it's a 6.1 right now. So that's kind of what I expected. It's not gonna be anything that high just because the critic ratings are high. But what am I gonna give this? I'm actually going to give this a 7.2 out of 10, which, considering Rotten Tomatoes system, that would be considered a positive review. So yeah, I do think this is overall a positive review. I think it was a good film. I just think it had a lot of issues, and it would have been possibly an 8 out of 10 or even a 9 out of 10 if it was R-rated and they went full on with it. I really hope there's an R-rated cut out there and they can release the R-rated cut, because that would be awesome. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Did you see this movie? Did you enjoy it? If you didn't see it, are you gonna go see it? I will see you on my next one. Peace out.